Welcome to part 4. Now let's talk about the aesthetics element. Aesthetics, abbreviated AES, are graphical elements that are mapped to data. They include elements like dimension, color, size, type of line. These are all things that we think of as aesthetics when we look at a graph. So in the grammar of graphics, this is formalized as an aesthetic. Different types of geometries often require different types of aesthetics. So you have to be cognizant of what geom you're going to use when you choose aesthetics. So let's take a look at a setup with some aesthetics. So here, what I'm doing is an example of mapping. Remember, we're using the MPG data. An example of mapping engine displacement to the x-axis and highway mileage to the y-axis. So I'm indicating simply that x is displacement and y is highway. Now, when we actually put these in, let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Remember, here's our plot over here. It's already got a layer. You can't see very much, but it's got a layer. It's got data. It's just that we haven't defined how we're going to display those data. But now we're going to start with the aesthetic of x being displacement, y being HWY, which I believe is highway mileage. If we want to go back to the help, we can make sure that's true. Let's see. Yeah, highway miles per gallon. Okay? And displacement, engine displacement in liters. So that's something about the size of the engine. So I expect that bigger size is probably going to mean fewer miles per gallon. There's probably going to be a negative relationship that we're going to see. As size goes up, miles per gallon goes down. All right, let's go back to our plot and let's go ahead and put that aesthetic on the plot. Here we go. All right, so what happened here? Well, we automatically now have some things put in that have to do with our data set, miles per gallon. Notice that I put it on line 34 here. I put it in ggplot, so it's going to apply to everything I do from now on unless I override it, okay? The displacement here is the size of the engine in liters. Here is the highway miles per gallon. Notice that ggplot automatically put in, based upon the data which already existed here, what it's going to need for a range in order to cover everything in terms of highway and in terms of displacement. So that was done for us. We still don't see anything, and that's because we need a geom. So let's talk about geoms a minute. Geometric objects, or geoms, control the type of plot that is created. Many geometric objects are based on dimensions. So if you're dealing with zero-dimension objects, you could have points or text. If you're dealing with one-dimensional objects, you can have paths or lines. If you're dealing with two-dimensional objects, you can have polygons or intervals. The type of geometric object often defines the default aesthetics. That is, what you have as an aesthetic by default is known from what geometric object that you're using. So I mentioned before that we have to use certain aesthetics for certain type of objects. Geometric objects often include default positioning that can be modified. So there's a default of where the object is placed, but we can modify that. All right, let's start working with geoms, starting simpler, and then we can get more complex later. So the geometric object layers, or geomes, control actual graphical elements. They can have 0 dimensions, pointer text, 1 dimension, path or line, or 2 dimensions, a polygon or interval. I'm going to start with 0 dimensions, make it easy. So here I'm putting everything together into one function. Remember, the plus sign needs to be at the end of the layer in order to keep it going. And so we're going to use the geome of point. The aesthetics being given to it are the global aesthetics, which are already on our graph. X is displacement, Y is highway. So when I run this, I now actually will see the data that was already there. You can think of the data already being there, but what your geome point command did is it said, okay, take the data that's already there and give it a point. If we had asked it for a different kind of geome, then it would have given us something else. Now what I'm going to do is add a third aesthetic. I'm going to add color. And I'm going to add that color based upon the class of the automobile. If we go back here to help, we'll see that class means type, and it's in quotes here, type of cars. So we'll see what types there are once we go ahead and include that aesthetic. So I'm going to do this graph again. But this time I'm going to add in color, and here it is. So we can see now what the available classes of cars are: 2-seater, compact, midsize, minivan, pickup, subcompactor, and SUV. And the color now is with these points, these geome points, based upon whatever class that we're referring to. Now note that if I had wanted to, I could have added class locally. That is, I might have said, I'm not going to use color for everything I do here. I'm going to put in other geomes, and I don't want class to be in those other geomes, in which case then you would do it like I've done here on lines 52 and 53. Here, this is going to make engine displacement and highway mileage as global, but it's only putting color with the geome point. But at this stage of the game, because we only have a geome point, when I run this, let me go ahead and clear this plot out. When I run this, we get the exact same thing. Okay? So how many layers just occurred just there? We had 3, right? We had our data, then we had our aesthetics, and then we had the geome point. But when we added the geome point, we added another aesthetic, and that is the color. Okay, we now have looked at 3 layers: data layer, aesthetic, and geometries. And in the next video, we'll look at some more layers.